Happy Saturday night, everyone. Hope everybody having a blessed day, man. Shout out to the mighty LDBC. We're here with another installment of the Southern Baller Show. I have my panel, my co-host, of course, Coach 67 Sports TV. That brother Brent Fox, y'all. He just dropped a video. He's going to be a great content maker. So please go ahead and subscribe. And then my bro JB, how's everybody doing?
Doing all right, man. Thank you so much for the love that you gave, man. I appreciate it.
Blessed and highly favored, bro. And we want to wish our brother Brent Fox a happy belated birthday. Happy belated birthday to you, bro.
Happy birthday.
Man, thank y'all.
Happy birthday to you and Mike Tyson.
Yeah, that's right. That's the greatest fight they ever fought. Yeah.
Oh man. We had some good. Before we got on here, I was watching a couple boxing matches, man. My girl Franchise Cruz lost.
Yeah, I saw that.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So what happened?
She tired herself out. She was catching old girl Marshall with some very good punches, but Marshall being the taller fighter, she wasn't the strongest. You could see, but she was, keeping that stick out there, catching Franchise Cruz coming in, and she was doing that all night. But if Cruz would have kept with her jab and kept going to the body, because a lot of the body punches were hurting Marshall. I believe she could have got Marshall out of there, but she's singing the national anthem and stuff, and she did a good job. But like my man Stormy B Man said, like, focus on the fight. And I encourage you guys to go watch Stormy B Man. He has a good take on that fight.
Yeah. And I saw post fight Clarissa Shields said if Savannah Marshall wants a rematch, she's to come to the US.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, beat her down here too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Cruz was smothering her work, and I mean, she was landing shots, but it wasn't really clear punches. It was just, she was doing like Sean Porterish stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but that's for like I say, go watch Stormy B Man and other boxing brothers in LDBC that's covering covered that fight. They definitely have a great perspective and a take on how they thought it turned out, of what Franchise Cruz could have done better, and what Marshall did to win that fight. But today we're not going to talk about boxing. We're going to talk about football, but we're going to have a little twist to it. We're going to talk about mental health and football. Now, I know a lot of people's position in the sport of football, especially in America, are like, hey, you signed up for it. It is what it is. But in reality, a lot of these participants that play the sport of football are coming away with very serious and permanent injuries, and not just physically but mentally. So we're going to try to talk about that today. And by the way, guys, let's please like and subscribe. And thank you for watching. All right. So one of my first questions is, has the NFL improved on protecting the players from the brain injuries? And the reason why I chose to talk about this topic is I mean, for the past few more, just look what happened in the previous season. With Tua. What happened to him when he got hit. Hamlin.
Damar Hamlin, yeah.
Damar Hamlin. And then we had, it's and don't get me wrong, the NFL has done a great job. Well, the NFL has changed their rules as far as not hitting no kill shots to the head like John Lynch or Troy Polamalu, even Ed Reed used to do, Sean Taylor. But of course, like we discussed earlier, guys, this sport is a demanding sport, and these gridiron athletes, these gridiron warriors, are clotting amongst each other with all their force. So somebody eventually gonna get hurt. So, in your opinion, starting with Coach, is the NFL it's improving on brain injuries, or it's basically a lost cause? Somebody gonna get hurt anyway, unfortunately.
From my perspective, I think they've done the best they could under the circumstances in terms of, you had all of these CTE cases. For example, somebody like Mike Webster, he led with the Chronics helmet for years playing center. It eventually cost him his life. You got other examples like Junior Seau. A lot of these guys had CTE. But at the end of the day, you can't really legislate violence out of the game, no matter how many precautionary measures you take, unless basically you take it and you turn it into some type of touch football or some type of 7-on-7. You're not really going to legislate violence out the game. So it's going to kind of be what it is. Because, even, when you stop taking, take away players leading with the crown of their helmet, of course, now, in that particular instance, players start going low and chop blocking a lot of players. That was one thing I was always synonymous for when I played. And then, of course, they want to get rid of that because a lot of players were having, like, debilitating knee injuries. Even somebody like Keyshawn Johnson was saying, that's how I make my money. So, don't target my legs. So, in that particular instance, if a receiver's come across the middle, either you can, hit him, leave with the crown of your helmet, hit him helmet to helmet, or you can take his legs out from under him. Then there are some instances where you don't aim too high, you don't aim too low, but the player may, drop his shoulder pad and change his pad level, and you really don't know where he's going to end up, and you're still in the wrong in that particular instance. So, like many individuals have said over the years, football is not a contact sport, it's a collision sport. So at the end of the day, there's no way you're going to be able to legislate violence out the game. So, it's going to be what it's going to be, because I know even like on like the middle school level, which I coach, they tried to do away with, having too many players in a wedge. I think the most you can have, like when you kick it deep, it's like 2 people in a wedge, something along those lines. But at the end of the day, you still have these violent collisions anyway. So it is what it is,
Okay, good point. Anybody, JB or Brent, has anything to add on what Coach said?
Oh yeah, absolutely. What I would say to answer your question is yes, on the surface, while these guys are serviceable to the NFL, I'm sure that they're doing what they can to make sure that they protect the product. Excuse me. They're trying to protect these men out here playing. But afterwards, the residual effects of having to constantly take contact every down, especially with like the linemen who collide all the time. Like there's not a snap that goes by that they don't collide. people aren't thinking about, well, maybe they are not visualizing maybe the long lasting effects of collisions like that. But yeah, on the surface, the NFL is doing quote unquote the right thing to try to have more protective equipment. Making sure that making sure that the strike zones are different from what they once were. Penalizing players who actually hit around the head and shoulder area, and I'm not head and shoulder area, but around the head area, stuff like that. But to be honest with you, it is like Coach said, it's gonna be, because football is the way that it is what it is as far as like the collisions. I think unfortunately it's gonna be inevitable, because you're gonna have people, even with a play like sliding down to avoid contact. Sometimes if you slide too late, you could get your bell rung anyway. And then you also have situations to where if someone's trying to take out a bigger person with gaining more momentum or whatnot, they could easily just put their head down and try to take their legs out, and then they catch a knee, and that's a concussion.
Man, so basically,
Who you dealing with?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Very good point. Very good point. JB.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I think, man, basically, they already took. You can't even hit nobody no more. What else? Football is what you sign up for. It's like boxing. You don't get hit. You know what I'm saying? So if they try to protect the players even more, just like Coach said, it's gonna be flag football, 2-hand touch. So,
and then the offensive side of the ball gonna be is gonna be licking their chops, because the defense can't hardly do anything. So, just in football perspective, yeah.
But like Coach and Brent perfectly said, they already took. They took out the stuff that probably need to be taken out, like the wedge and cutting out people's knees when they already engaged with a blocker and stuff like that. So stuff like that is sensible. But other than that, or like what you used to do, Jared used to cut linemen when they pull, used to take their knees out, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Shoot, don't be getting on him. I used to do that too, boy. The coach, as a matter of fact, used to teach us how to chop at the waist and then just roll down, like fall down.
Bro,
make a pile.
Yeah.
Bro, I'm not gonna lie. As an offensive lineman, I always played against bigger guys like Jay Goodsize. Now, just imagine me trying to block him. There's no way I would have been physically big enough or strong enough to match him. So anytime I came up against guys like that, man, I would just chop block them, because I knew just trying to stand there, match strength with them, I wasn't gonna win. So I just took chop block them every time as much as I could,
Facts, man.
Yes, especially being an undersized lineman playing the high school ball or whatever. That was me. Definitely. But good perspective, fellas. Good speaking points. Moving on to the next topic. Will you allow your son to play football? Now, the reason why I thought this was interesting to bring up and ask to the panel is because, like I discussed to you guys earlier, I've heard a lot of former NFL players say, because how demanding the sport is to your body, they will never have their kids play football. And nowadays, not just boys, girls are playing little league or even middle school and high school football. So, Coach, starting with you, and then I mainly want to hear Coach and Brent Fox. And JB, you can come in last, but starting with you, Coach, what do you think?
Well, first and foremost, I don't have any kids of my own yet, but Lord willing, I will. And I'm not going to deter them away from playing football whatsoever because, I am a middle school coach. And, truthfully speaking, I haven't seen like a whole lot of like major catastrophic injuries on a middle school level. I mean, I have seen injuries, but like, yeah, I mean, even when I was in high school, you didn't see a whole lot of guys like break legs or tear ACLs, that type of thing. Even though it did happen, I never experienced it firsthand. But, I definitely will, when the Lord blesses me to have children, I'll let my son play. And like I said, I've coached middle school players. A lot of the players I've coached, of course, I coached the middle school team this year. A couple of them going to transition to high school next year. A lot of players I've coached over the years. Of course, some of them grown men at this point. But I have a crop of players that are in high school ranging from freshmen to like seniors in high school. And for the most part, no major like lingering issues on the surface. So, I mean, the thing I have an issue with is, being that I coach middle school football, like some of the lower levels. Like, for example, I know a player I coached, like he has like a younger brother that's now like 6, and he's playing like tackle football as a 6-year-old. To me, that's a little bit young. I mean, I think maybe you get to maybe 10, 11, cool. But like 5, 6-year-olds playing tackle football, I think that's a little bit too young for my liking. But for the most part, I feel like when the Lord blesses me to have children, when I have a son that reaches a certain age, I definitely wouldn't have a problem with him playing football.
Okay. Brother Brent.
Yeah, I really thought long and hard about this one, y'all. Honestly, I would let my son play if he wanted to. Now, what I would probably wind up doing is I would train him very hard to make sure that he is actually ready for the violence that actually comes with the game. I think it's important to have a level of preparedness, especially for that particular sport. Like, there's an old saying with football, is if you play scared, you're going to wind up getting hurt. So, I think preparedness is like a major thing to help avoid injuries, really. If you are prepared and you kind of had a sense of what's actually going on and know what you're doing, then injuries are less likely to occur. They're going to happen, but they'll be less likely to occur. But it's got to be something my son wants to do in order for me to allow him to do something like that.
Okay. All right.
Oh.
And that's a very good perspective because when me and my brother we first attempted to wrestle, we didn't like all the running and the conditioning. But eventually we got, like Brent Fox said, you can't do this scared. So once we put our mind to them and we're not gonna act like no cupcakes on the mat, we became pretty good wrestlers. So I definitely agree with that, Brent. So a lot of these kids, if they're gonna do it, they can't play games with it, or they will be hurt. And
Hey,
don't
can
get me
y'all hear
wrong.
me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. My fault.
No, you're fine. You're fine. JB, what's your opinion?
Well, as you know, like the coach said, um, we don't. I don't have kids yet, but like coach said, I'm not going to deter them away from playing football, but I am going to educate them on the positives and the negatives of playing football. There's other, and especially if there's other sports. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to treat my sons like if they don't play football, it's not a man sport. You know, if they want to go out and play tennis, they can play tennis. If they want to wrestle, they can wrestle. If they want to play basketball, they can play basketball. But like Brent Fox said, whatever you do, make sure you do it, 100%. You know what I'm saying? And you will, and injuries are just part of any sport. But like Brent said, like you can't half-ass it. You see what I'm saying? Or you will get hurt.
Absolutely. Salute to Jay Barr in the chat. He said, "Salute family. Thank you." Um, Living big with Big Red. What's up, Reg? He said these are some good topics. Love hearing the opinion on this. Yes, thank you, brother. But I ain't gonna lie. If I know my son is not mentally ready for playing a sport like football, even wrestling, even boxing, they just talking because they friends doing it, or they see their peers are good at it and they're not. Of course, I'm gonna try to give them the tools to try to get better. But if I know they're gonna just half-ass it, then no, definitely not. That's just my opinion.
I'm kind of tired. I'm really getting tired of black men being, you know, making feel like if they don't play sports, that's the end all be all anyway. But it's something that I enjoy because I played it. My dad, he was my first coach, so that's why I got into it. So
Yes.
Yeah, and just to kind of add on to what JB was just saying, my dad was my first coach also, and in addition to that, so many of the students that I coach, as a football and basketball coach, they're just a teacher in general. They feel like the only way they could get to a certain level in life is being a athlete, a professional athlete, or entertainer. And I used to tell these students all the time, I'm like, just getting a good education is a powerful tool. Like you can't dismiss the value of a good education. I mean, the probability you making it to the NFL or the NBA, is very low. I mean, you have a better chance of winning the lottery or winning the Powerball than you have of making it to the NFL or NBA. So your main focus should be on your education. Because even when I was coaching high school basketball, I told the players on the team, like the probability of you making it to even get a scholarship in college to play college basketball is 0.1%. And I wrote on a dry erase board to show them like how small a chance they actually have of getting a scholarship to play college basketball. And they were like, wow. And I'm like, yeah. So your main focus should be, getting you a good education. You don't need to, you do not need to play sports or be a rapper or some type of entertainer to reach your financial goals in life. A good education in itself is a very powerful tool.
Yes, and this falls into the mentally. There will be a whole ass. And excuse my language, just being. There are a lot of how I'm feeling. There are a lot of whole ass adults that are coaches, that are teachers regarding the sports that will make these students feel, or these young men and women feel like if they don't achieve but they think they achieve their failures. Now,
And they
if you're a coach trying to, because we all know on this panel there are a lot of life lessons you can learn from football. Getting up in the morning on your summer vacation, doing 2-a-days. That's teaching you how to be a man in the future. You know what I mean? Getting up and doing something you have to do. So you can, like 78 said, doing something that you have to do. So eventually you can do something you can do at will. So but going back to my point, there's a lot of whole ass coaches, and Josh, you know where I'm getting at, or JB, that because they didn't make it, they're gonna try to put that expectation on these students,
or live through these kids.
And not in because there are some fathers and mothers that they do live through their kids. They honestly love the kids or the young people they're coaching, and they don't really mean no harm. But I'm talking about the ones that really don't mean the kids no. If they're not a star player, they can really give less than a damn. Go ahead, JB.
Yeah, man. We seen it in wrestling and football where you get these parents, man, that take you remember we had somebody that wasn't good on the team. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Or football and wrestling, and you see how the coaches treat them compared to the best person on the football team or the best person on any team. And then we've seen coaches, right, that are builders, and that took that person that wasn't good at it and made them. I seen a person that was terrible at wrestling. 2 years with shout out to Coach Bruno. He was in the state championship. So there's different type of coaching where you just coaching. We talked about it on this show. Coaches that they can just coach talent. They can't coach the build. You know what I'm saying? We hear this in the Ravens YouTube channels. Like you can tell Mike Tomlin, even though he's a Steeler, but he's a builder.
He's a builder. You can't take that away.
He's gonna get the best out of his players. And Harbaugh is more of a inspirational, inspirational guy, but he's not really a builder. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, JB, you bring up such a valid point because I say about 3 weeks ago, a coaching friend and I was talking. Like one of the coaches that was one of the rival coaches in my middle school league, he went up to the high school level, and we just was talking about things from an X and O standpoint, and I was saying that hey, he only knows how to run a certain type of defense and a certain type of offense. And he was saying, Coach, it just sounds as if he essentially just echoed the same talking points you did, JB, in terms of basically, I told him, I'm like, in terms of the middle school teams, he had one of the best teams like year in and year out, and he just had the best talent, but he didn't have to coach his talent up the way I did. Like I actually,
right.
Like, I remember like my first year, bro, we only won one game, and for the most part, like we were getting smacked. And in addition to that, like in terms of just from a number standpoint, I have like 16 players on my team, and we would play against opposing teams that had like 35, 40, 45 players on their team. And, practice in and practice out, I would have 7, 6, 8 players at practice, whereas like I don't even have enough players to run first team offense against scout team defense, scout team offense against first team defense. I never had that amount of players, so I actually had to build it and get it out the mud. And then the next year, the players I had, I had some talented players that joined the team, but for the most part, like those foundational players that played the year before, essentially we got it out the mud. And he did, of course, his team beat my team more so because, of course, we only had 16 players, whereas he had 44 players on his team, but he had a loaded team. And then the crazy thing about it, like the playing game we had to make the playoffs, it was like every call went his way, and it just worked out the way they just won it. But the thing about it is, in terms of when he transitioned from middle school to high school, it's like he didn't have the same level of talent, and it's kind of reflecting. And basically, my coaching friend was like, "Coach, he knows how to coach talent. He doesn't know how to, develop and groom players, and build from the ground up the way, essentially he just kind of say the same thing you just said."
There's a lot of coaches out here like that, man, and not just football, any sport. They just don't know how to coach from the ground up.
And with y'all saying, what y'all saying right there, and I'm redirecting back to the topic, right? How will that mess with these younger kids' mental? If they're being told at a young age, if you don't do this and do that, you're no good. You're a piece of crap.
Well, I mean, a lot of these coaches, they're not teaching these kids like basic fundamental skills, because I know in many instances, like more so from a basketball standpoint, and I tell these players all the time, I'm like, the Golden State Warriors winning the NBA championship was like the worst thing that could happen to basketball, because a lot of these players, they just want to jack up 3-point shots, play in and play out. And I'm like, y'all do understand that Steph Curry and Klay Thompson's, both of their dads played in the NBA. So from a genetic standpoint, they have a competitive advantage that you players will never have. And in addition to that, they had resources growing up that you don't have also. So they have two advantages that you don't have as a player. So you can't pattern your game after Klay Thompson and Steph Curry, because, Del Curry and Michael Thompson played in the NBA, and they had long NBA careers. From a financial standpoint, they're in a more advantageous socioeconomic and financial situation than you guys are. So you can't play the way they play. And not only that, it's like y'all don't know how to run offense. The one thing y'all should have gathered from Golden State is the fact that, Golden State, they do an excellent job running offense. Y'all just want to get out here and play street ball. I know we have to be a fundamentally sound team, especially from a basketball standpoint. And, even from a football standpoint, these players don't want to come to practice. They just want to show up on game day. And I'm like, fellas, that was one of the downside from me being a football coach, is like the teams I've always coached. Like I would always have like 16, 15 players. So from a number standpoint, I couldn't say, well, hey, if you don't come to practice, you can't play, because, if 11 players are on the field at a time and I only have 16 players, I don't have that luxury, Now, if I had 40 players, well, hey, we don't need you. Hey, you don't come to practice, you don't play. That's one thing our coaches always taught us. Essentially, game time is your paycheck. But if you don't come to work during the week, come to practice, then you can't play in the game. So, just instilling these values in players is one thing that I really, over the years, I've tried to emphasize, just the basics, like basic and fundamental skills. Whereas a lot of these, little league basketball coaches in particular, I'm not gonna lie, from a Breck and a Pop Warner standpoint, these coaches, they do a better job in terms of, teaching the kids the fundamental from a football standpoint. It's more basketball where these kids just want to jack up shots,
Right. The perspective, Coach JB, what is your opinion as far as if these coaches in these schools or colleges um, treat these players like used goods, what type of mental health will that affect these young men and grown men in their personal lives?
So and I'm not gonna give away the topic, but it's gonna develop some of the stuff that we're dealing with now and what we're gonna talk about later. In the mental part of it, where it's just they think they failed. But you know, you tried something and wasn't for you, you wasn't the best at it, and they need to learn that's being a man. That's some of the things about being a man, where you're gonna try something, right? And you may fail. You can't stop. You gotta keep going. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay. Brent Fox, your opinion?
My opinion is pretty much kind of in line with what Coach was saying. The only thing that I would probably add to something like that is sometimes, like Coach was kind of alluding to earlier, if it's a situation to where, you know what, this happens a lot. I'm gonna be honest with you. I've seen this with all the way up to high school. These parents will individualize their kids, which, I mean, okay, you want your children to surpass you with everything, but sometimes, man, it's too much emphasis on the athletic side as opposed to, you know, all other areas. Like if their kid makes a play, all of a sudden they're this all-star and you got to get them the ball every down. Or if the kid is bigger and they make a pancake block, then they need to actually have they need to actually run the ball to their side all the time, or you need to have rollout passes to their side all the time so it highlights them and all of that stuff. People are kind of losing sight that football is a team sport. And if you individualize somebody, which, unfortunately, a lot of folks are guilty of, then that can kind of lead to injuries because there's selfish play involved. So that aspect of it kind of makes me kind of look sideways at it. But to Coach's point, like I think fundamentals are key. They are vital to being a successful player in the first place. Like you don't go anywhere, regardless of your physical ability and talent level. You don't go anywhere without skill building, and that requires you knowing fundamentals. That's what I got.
But and the thing about it, Brent Fox, you brought up an excellent point, bro. A lot of these parents are delusional about, what their child is or isn't. I haven't had as many issues with it from a football standpoint. It's always kind of been more from a basketball perspective. Just kind of give you a couple examples. I just one kid, 1 year he wasn't even good enough to make the team. But when COVID hit, like I just needed players just to have a team. So I really didn't want him, but I just had to take him on the team. And, the mom was like, well, you play this, that, and the third. And, he didn't play in the first game. So the next game, like one of the starters, like one of the key players, he got injured. So he got in the game, and the first time he touched the ball, he jacked up a shot and he made it. So, of course, every time he touched the ball, he jacking up shots. So
worst thing that could have happened.
So I told him, I'm like, hey, son, like, me and the other coach, me and my assistant coach, who's like, oh no, bro, like we don't play ball like that. Hey, when such and such, I'm like, well, first of all, I didn't even sugarcoat. I'm like, you not as good as that kid and that kid. So don't compare yourself to them. And the thing that made it even worse was his mom and her brother came over to the sideline like during the timeout. And that's why I said, man, don't ever come on my bench during the game. You need to go your behind back and sit in those bleachers, because the thing that made it even worse was the fact that I paid for the two of them to get in the game because she didn't have any cash. I'm like, look, you better go back over there.
No.
Oh, hell no.
You better go back in those bleachers and
Yeah,
sit
she
behind.
completely out of line for that.
So, I told him, like, hey, son, like, we don't play ball that way. We move the ball. It's about player movement and ball movement. So I told him, and the other coach and I already knew, like, hey, we didn't want this ball on the team to begin with. So the next game, the thing that even made it even worse, bro. We played the game. Of course, we don't have no quality players, because essentially all the starting players I would have had, they were academically ineligible because, since we were hybrid, we were virtual. They weren't logging on. So essentially, 5 of my starters failed off the team. So, we playing with, not as, the talent wasn't as good. So this next game, he played essentially like the whole first quarter. I took him out with like a few seconds left. And I'm like, and he started complaining about, I didn't get minutes, I got seconds. And I'm like, son, if you don't shut up, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, you essentially played the whole quarter. You came out with a few seconds left in the quarter, like, no matter what. And I told him, I'm like, son, you remind me of this young lady I used to date. No matter what I did for her, nothing was ever good enough. And so after the game, I told her mom, I'm like, look, I don't even want your son on my team. Because I'm like, no matter what I do, like nothing is ever good enough for him. So I told her, I'm like, look, point blank. I'm like, first of all, last year, he wasn't even good enough to be on my team. I'm like, had these other players, had they listened to me and did they work and they were being academically ineligible, hey, he wouldn't even be on my team. I told her point blank, I'd have cut him. And I'm like, no matter what I do, nothing is good enough. Like, he played just about the whole quarter. Some of these other guys, they just got in the bench in the end of the quarter because the quarter was just about over. And he complained about he didn't get to play enough. I said, ma'am, look, you could just take him. Because I say, he's unappreciative, he's ungrateful, and he can't play. I told her point blank. And she was like, yeah, he's like that at home. I'm like, well, you created this monster. I'm like, and I told him, like, you created this monster, and I'm like, no matter what he does, what I do for this kid, nothing is ever good enough. So you could take him. I already knew he was gonna come begging to get back on the team. I'm like, look, just take him. I don't want him back. Sure enough, like the next week, he come crawling back to me begging to get back on the team. And all we had was like one game left. And I told the other coach, like, hey, if you want, we could take him back. But I'm like, I told him, I'm like, hey, son, if I take you back on my team, one word out of you, hey, take your stuff and just get the hell on. Because guess what? I'm not tolerating foolishness in the nonsense, because I say, I'm going to be truthful. You're not worth the hassle at this point. You can't play. I told him, I told him point blank to his face. I'm like, you can't play and you always complaining. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, bro, like son, just go sit down somewhere. And I could kind of go on and on with these type of stories, but just kind of wrap it up. Like at a previous school, I was no longer the coach. They had another guy that ended up becoming the head coach of the high school, even though I was like next in line. So, I went to this convenience store and the kid couldn't play. Like, he wasn't athletic enough to be a wing player, and he wasn't big enough to be a big. He really had no real discernible skill set, so he really didn't deserve to be on the team. So if it would have been me, had I been the head coach, I just would have cut him and just kind of did it quickly and as painlessly as possible. It would have been quick and painless. But the other coach, he won't play around with him. He won't keep him on the team. Essentially, he just kind of wanted him to quit and tap out. And this kid was not going to tap out nor quit. So what ended up happening was I ended up going to a convenience store. And she was like, one of the other ladies was like, hey, coach. And I'm like, how you doing, ma'am? So I got to talking to her a minute. And, she coming to, the other lady coming to, see what I want in terms of food, whether I wanted fried chicken, chicken tenders, whatever the case may be, because it was like a convenience store, like / restaurant. And his mom was like, coach, you cut my, I said, hold up, ma'am. I said, I no longer coach, so I don't have anything to do with that. And she was like, oh, well, who's the head coach? I said, well, this individual's the head coach. She was like, oh, I need to talk to him because my baby can play. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, no, your baby can't play. Your baby's a scrub. but I didn't want to tell her that, though. You know what I'm saying? But at that point, it was no longer my problem, though. You know, so.
I don't mean to interrupt you, so this goes also to mental health. So lying to these kids.
Well, I don't think they intentionally lying to the kids. The parents are delusional about how good the kids really are. And, you know, like I was telling like one of my friends.
Hold on, that I understand what you were saying, but my point is, as far as like you were saying, as far as maybe not being the parents being delusional to their kids.
No, both the kids and the parents are delusional.
Yeah, that's my point. Let me get the question out. So,
you know, when we were kids, we knew what
Hold on, coach. So, how would that affect a kid in the long run with both the parents and the kid being delusional? And when they go out to try something, and then a coach that's no nonsense like you, or another coach that's just gonna be honest, I'm sorry, son, you're just not that good. You know what I mean? How that? I mean, whose fault is that?
I mean, I think it kind of falls on both the kid and the parent. But you got to realize in many of these instances, like this lady, in her instance, she never had no real dealings with sports. You know, so in that particular instance, I can't say it's her. And in terms of the kid, you know, these kids nowadays, they just want to emulate what they see on TV. Whereas they don't really have any real awareness. You know, what I was getting ready to say was the fact that when we were in school, like we knew where we stood. We knew if we were average, above average. We knew we were star, superstar. Like me personally, I knew I was an average player. So whether it was football or basketball, I kind of understood my strengths, my weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and my limitations. So I played to my strengths. Whereas a lot of these kids nowadays, they're just delusional and they don't understand it. Like you have to break it to them. I mean, you know, it's kind of like you telling a chick, just to kind of give you an analogy. You know, she thinks she's the most attractive female ever, and you like, why does she have an attitude? She's not that good looking, and no matter how much you tell her you're not that attractive, no matter what you tell her, she still thinks she's that chick. And these kids, even if you cut him, well, hey, he cut me just because he didn't like me. And I'm like, no, son, I cut you because you're a scrub.
Yeah.
But they can't connect the dots though, bro. So in that particular instance, there's nothing you really could tell them. They just still think and the crazy thing about it, just to kind of conclude the story I was telling you about the kid, no matter what you did for him, no matter how much he played, it was never ever good enough. His 7th grade year, I cut him. His 8th grade year, COVID hit. That was one of the reasons why he was on the team. Right. So my assistant coach ended up being assistant coach at the high school the next year. And a mama saw him, and basically she tried to come beg and plead him to let him, and he was like, no. He cut her off before she can really ask him. He was like, if you got to ask and beg and plead to get on the team, you're not good enough to play. So he shut her down before she could even ask. But she knew, I think she deep down, she really knew her son wasn't good enough.
I understand she was trying to build some self-esteem for her son.
Oh, she wasn't trying to build that. She just wanted her son because she didn't want to be bothered with the little Negro. That's what it was. I'm just being
But before we move on to the next topic, JB, Brent Fox, any feedback on what Coach and we were saying?
I was just sitting back enjoying from Coach 67 perspective, being a coach. And you got and we had a lot of those. We had a lot of those people when we grew up. They made the team because they parents intimidated the coach that makes the team. You know, Lil Ray ain't shit. He ain't no running back. He ain't got no vision. He running backwards. He don't follow his lineman. He think it's they trying to run a toss play, and he run just to the sideline. He's scared to get hit, but the coach is all up in the coach's face. All up in the coach's face, threatening, telling him, I'm going to take my baby to another school.
You mean the parents? You said coaches.
I mean the parents say I'm gonna take my baby to another school and stuff like that. So it's just Coach 67 just verifying stuff we already know, and what he has to go through, and a lot of these coaches have to go through from his perspective.
Hey, JB, watch this. Watch this.
Mm-hmm.
When we first wrestled, were we good?
Hell no.
Yeah.
Them white boys tore our behind up, and that made us better because my dad, you know, we got an old school dad. We was trying to quit, and dad was like, "I paid for them daggone physicals. Get y'all black ass back out there and wrestle." And I'm glad he did, because eventually we was in a position to earn a scholarship to wrestle. You see what I'm saying? We was okay football play. I got hurt my senior year, but you made all conference. But you know, we was the type of dudes. We wasn't great or good at anything, but we got better as we, like Coach and Brent said, repetition, technique. We was blessed to have coaches to teach us technique. We had some fuck ass coaches. Trust me. But people like Coach 67 who we had some coaches like Coach 67 who told us the truth. Son, you might be good, you got potential, but you're gonna have to sit on the bench and learn how to play.
Brother Brent.
Oh yeah, definitely. Now, yeah, just kind of bouncing off the stories and testimonies of Coach and also JB, man. I also think that what's mentally damaging with some of these kids that participate in athletics is, they do emulate or see what's on TV, or if they go to a game, they see a player stand out and he's, physically dominating. And, and I hate to just kind of be like that, but, we have to be more realistic or set realistic expectations with the kids from the jump. Okay. There's, jeez, I don't want to be this person, man, but I'm gonna just go ahead and say it, bro.
Go ahead and say it.
Everybody ain't able. You know what I mean? There are a lot of people that come back and they say, they're successful, and they come back and they try to inspire these kids, which, I mean, I would do that too. It's a great notion. And, their main thing is, hey, if you work hard, you can achieve anything. And if I can do it, you can do it. That's not necessarily the case most of the time. Like, most of the time, that's not a case. Like, that person that's talking or making those particular speeches and trying to inspire people, more than likely, that's an exceptional person talking to average people. And I've come to find this out the hard way.
Ooh.
When you're an exceptional person speaking to average people, and you try to give them exceptional expectations, you are setting them up for failure. You can, I think the most inspirational thing that someone can actually do is just try to look at that particular person, and just set realistic expectations for them. Not anything over the top, like, hey, you can, conquer the business world if you follow this particular model, or you could be rich like me if you do this, this, and this. The
Right.
world has enough of that. And most of the time, it doesn't work out. What would probably say if I were coaching to my kids is, look, I'm going to evaluate you. And then we're going to see how you can actually help the team. Okay. I would incentivize positions that don't get a whole lot of the, a whole lot of accolades or glory, like offensive and defensive linemen, and then tight ends. On of course like the the little league level, because they don't get a whole lot of spin. So with those types of positions, I would incentivize them. Like they could get like maybe a free hamburger, or I take them to CC's to eat or something like that. If one of the running backs has a real good game, or if one of the receivers has a good game, or the quarterback does well or something like that, to incentivize that. You take them all out, okay? And then you say, even if there is one lineman that actually stands out above the rest, you take the whole unit out, because you want to give them a realistic idea of, hey, we all need each other, because you basically do, especially in football. It is a team sport, okay? And to be quite honest with you, some of those average guys that aren't all that great help hold up the person that's actually dominating. Like, everybody has to do their job. That is not a cliche. Everyone has to do their job. So if you make everybody feel like they contribute, that helps build a healthier team dynamic, and in turn, helps them out mentally. Like, honestly, it does. But that's enough of my rant, man. I'm gonna stop.
And I'm not gonna lie, Brent. That kind of plays more in from a football standpoint, because I know from a coaching standpoint, I'm always short in terms of football players. Pretty much every year, I have like 16, 15, 14 players. This past season I finished with like literally 11 players, at the end of the season. So I don't cut football players, but from a basketball standpoint, it's a fine line. You can't have that participation trophy mentality. I think you can have that participation trophy mentality in the sport of football, but in the sport of basketball, you only have like 15 roster spots. And if all these players can't play, I might not even keep 15 in some instances, unless some of these players, I see their potential and they could be developmental players, then I'll keep those individuals. So I think it kind of, is a fine line between having a participation trophy mentality, but yet not giving all the praise and glory to certain individuals because they're the star player. Because I've seen that over the years too, where, hey, you only worried about this player because he's the star player on the team. And, the other player looking around like, hey, he's not the only player on the team, So I think it just kind of depends on what sport you're coaching at that particular time, whether it's basketball.
I got you, but football. I don't really, just for the record, I don't do participation trophies either. I'm just trying to promote a team dynamic. I don't do participation trophies like, oh, yeah, hey, you were on the team. Congratulations, you get a reward. No, you got to earn it.
Right.
Oh, and I agree, but I just was saying, is it a fine line in a certain balance that you have to have between those two different mindsets,
Right. I hear what you're saying. But fellas, moving on to the last topic. Is football causing stress and drug use? Over the past few months, we saw, and then some. We saw a couple of deaths that happened to former football players or people that's in the league, and finding out that they either basically overdosed on a drug. JB, I want you to go first on this, because when we was talking offline, you had some very good points. What do you think?
I don't think it's necessarily football. I think it's when you're at a higher level, like especially when people who are in college trying to get in the league and people who are in the league. And this was a very accurate picture. This was a good picture that you picked, Jared, with Ray Lewis' son and Jalen Ferguson. Rest in peace to both of them brothers. Jalen Ferguson, as you stated, offline. He was the NCAA leader in sacks. He beat Terrell Suggs record with 40 something sacks, 42, 43 something crazy like that. He was a beast for Louisiana Tech. And we drafted him because we trying to get that Terrell Suggs vibe back on the D line, and we thought he was going to be it, and he was not producing. And I could see him trying to be that guy, but he couldn't. You see what I'm saying? He couldn't. So, and then we learned when he died, man, it's just him just using drugs. To my mind, I think it was a stress of trying to be that guy. And on Instagram, I saw his picture of his family, his girlfriend or his kids. He was trying to be that guy.
So you think a lot of these players trying to medicate
pain, medicate stress, medicate trying to live up to an expectation. Ray Lewis' son, being the son of one of the best linebackers that ever played the game. I'm gonna say it again. Being the son of the probably one of the best linebackers that ever played the game. If you watched them play, you see what I'm saying? I couldn't even imagine. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you wasn't as good at him. People talking, "Oh, you're not as good as your daddy. You sure you from the Ray Lewis lineage?" You see what I'm saying? Stuff like that. I remember he was bouncing around schools. He went to Coastal Carolina. Then he went to I think
Virginia
he was at Virginia Union. I think
he was Miami first.
He was at Miami for a little bit. So he was just trying to find a niche. You see what I'm saying? Like these kids are doing now. And this was before the portal was a thing. He was doing that. So now his career is over, and he found out that he died. I don't know why, what drug he used, but his brother said in a tweet that my pop showed me this week. He said the brother of Ray Lewis III was saying that, "Brother, you don't have to struggle no more. I know what you were struggling with." So that, in my mind, says that he was dealing with a lot of stress, trying to live up to the Lewis name. So, to answer your question, I don't think it's football. I think it's the expectation of these football players, especially if they have success. You know what I'm saying? We call these players butts because they didn't make it in the league. But Jamarcus Russell was a beast in college. Ryan Leaf was a beast in college. Mm-hmm. And we call them a bust because they didn't make it. You know how, me being in the workforce, you know how many people fail not to do their job every day? So every day, people are walking bust every day. But since we can watch people failure and success, we have the liberty, even boxers, since we the LDBC, we get to say, "Oh man, he got knocked out. You know what I'm saying? He lost, you know what I'm saying? He a bum and everything." That's just like Deontay Wilder got an interview and he with 78. And he wants to keep people in mind that, we doing this for y'all entertainment. So
Good perspective. Brother Brent.
Okay. Now as far as folks using drugs, is it using drugs is a subject using the athletes using drugs because of stress, or is it just them using drugs, period?
Basically, is it because their football career didn't go as planned? and the stress that comes with that, like JB said, because of the expectations. Are they using
Uh,
drugs to try to medicate that, or that's not what Coach 67 said earlier? Is it because they just been using it? What you think it is this? Because we saw many of deaths like this on the rise lately.
Recreational use.
Gotcha. Now, what I'll do is I'll give you an example of both. Um, and then this one, the one I'll start off with was, yes, this person died of an overdose. And I think they were actually just using drugs kind of to cope with, what life was doing with them. I'm not gonna mention their name, but they were. This particular person was a standout in high school, very skilled player, and he went, of course, to college. College didn't quite work out, so they did the only other thing they knew how to do, which was just basically robbing people. So they went back to that. And of course, when you're in that particular type of world or whatever, there's a lot of stress involved. But that particular individual had always, I always felt bad that, of course, school didn't quite work out. And then, they were a failure and went back to square one. And unfortunately, a family member found them in their room, and they died of an overdose of it was codeine and some other drugs involved.
Oh man!
And then the second example was a gentleman that actually played in the NFL. He wasn't a significant NFL player. He's actually from here. The gentleman's name is Ennis Haywood. He went to Carter High School back when I was like in high school myself. He was a very good running back at Iowa State, and then wound up playing for the Cowboys. And people had held Ennis in real high regard. He was obviously a very good athlete, but he was a good dude. Like he never really get into any trouble. But of course, he smoked, and he also was on lean. And unfortunately, he took too much of it, and he wound up overdosing. But the reason that he was taking so much lean was because he was in constant pain. At that particular position, back in the early 2000s, it was very physically demanding. And since he was taking codeine recreationally, there was a certain numbness to it that, quote unquote, helped him out. So I guess one evening after a particularly hard practice, he just took the codeine and just took too much.
That's horrible, man. I hate these brothers, even though I hate to hear that, man. I really do. That hurt my heart. It hurts my heart.
Yeah.
It really do. Coach, what is your perspective on this?
My perspective on this particular, topic or subject is like 7-8 says all the time in the LDBC. Mental health is a real thing, and I think, people don't have the same like mental toughness or intestinal fortitude that we had in our generation. I hate to sound like the old guy, telling kids to get off his lawn. But, I think in today's day and age, people aren't as mentally tough as we were in our day. And as a result, because of social media and just pressures of everyday life, people just can't handle like just the stress of being, whether a student or athlete or whatever, like day in and day out. Now, in a particular instance of Ray Lewis III, it's unfortunate. May he rest in peace. But, it's obvious that, he didn't live up to the expectations of his dad. And that's one thing I've noticed over the years, when you have a dad that's like an all-time great. I'll give you an example. I remember when Tony Dorsett, he played in the NFL, and his son, ended up playing in the NFL. And many people thought, well, like, hey, he's not as good as his dad. Or, and I'll come up with so many examples. But, based on what I've seen from a sports standpoint over the years, like even if you look at like, Michael Jordan, Marcus Jordan, he wasn't a real good player. Patrick Ewing Sr. was a great center. Patrick Ewing Jr., not so much. So in many instances, I think those particular individuals have to realize that they don't have to be what their dad was, one. In many instances, two, another thing, these kids might be entitled. They might be accustomed to living a certain lifestyle, whatever the case may be. In some instances, it may come with recreational drug use. And in other instances, it's just like, well, hey, I can't live up to these expectations. I can't live up to the pressure of being this particular person's son. So I know personally, if I was to advise some of these individuals, just say, for example, your dad is an all-time great football player, I would stay away from playing football. I would try to go to another sport, like maybe playing basketball or baseball or whatever. Like, I'll give you an example. Calvin Hill, was a great football player, even though he played for the Dallas Cowboys. His son, Grant Hill, he didn't play football. He played basketball. Now, don't get me wrong, Grant Hill ended up being 6'8". But the point I'm trying to make is, in some instances, it's better you just take a different path than your parent who's an all-time great. Like,
Exactly.
you look at, like, Ken Norton Sr., another, like, great, football player. His son, great boxer. Ken Norton Sr. was a boxer, He fought Ali. He fought a lot of great boxers. His son, Ken Norton Jr., ended up being an NFL player. So in many instances, like whether it's maybe like Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s kids or whoever, like if that particular person is a professional athlete, I would just try to, develop and form my own identity and just take a different path. I wouldn't, try to replicate, because even if you look at like Joe Frazier, as great a boxer as he was, I hate to say it, Marvis Frazier just was not that good at all. He wasn't good at all. So in many instances, they need to try to develop and form their own identity, and they just need to go in a different direction. And
Right.
even if you do say, well, hey, like, Tony Dorsett and Anthony Dorsett, like, hey, my dad was a running back, well, I'm going to try to be a defensive back. You don't have to be what your dad was, but you have to form your own identity, and you don't have to worry about living up to everybody's expectations because, like I said, the day and age we living in, you have kids even at like a very, very, very young age deleting themselves. From a teacher's perspective, a lot of these kids are deleting themselves because they're being bullied in school, whether it's, face-to-face bullying, cyberbullying, whatever the case may be. And I'm like, wow, this was not as prevalent as, when we were in school, because basically you had to develop, thick skin and tough skin, and you just had to be able to deal with any adversity it was, whether it's, stress and pressure of being a student athlete or student athlete or whatever the case may be. So, just to kind of wrap up my point, mental health issues are real. Even just looking at, Roy Jones Jr.'s interview with Jared Big Baby Anderson, Big Baby, he seems as if like, even at this young age in his boxing career, like the pressure is getting to him. So I think somebody like him, he needs to get himself some counseling. Clearly, he doesn't love the sport.
And you ain't lying, because guess what, fellas? He was hurt multiple times in this fight.
Oh, I could believe it. It just seems to me as if boxing is a means to end for him. Once he reaches a certain financial level, I think he's just gonna give it up.
I don't blame him.
But in his particular situation, I'm just gonna be real. I think he needs to get him some counseling like straight away because it just seems as if like the pressure is just not. He just can't live up to it.
What up, Mike? Open mic with OTR. Mike said, "Family, what's good? Please subscribe to this brother. Very damn good channel, man."
What's good with your open mic with OTR?
Salute, open mic.
But man, yeah. But anybody who's listening to this, or somebody who's medicating themselves, a young athlete, or somebody who is playing sports, and they're medicating themselves with drugs that may harm them, please share this video, or hopefully this will motivate you to let them know to get some help, or try to talk to them or pray with them, whatever you have to do, because it's mental health is a real thing out here. People are really mentally.
Oh, my apologies.
Go ahead, Brother Brent.
I do not want to just keep bringing up negative examples, but I got to bring this particular example up because it's the ultimate example of how like series of concussions and sometimes having to take or over medicate yourself can ultimately put you in a very bad state mentally. A while back, there was a linebacker by the last name was Belcher. He used to play for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yes.
Unfortunately, this brother had severe issues after having to endure multiple concussions, and then he was over medicating himself. And unfortunately, he took the life of his wife and then went into the parking lot of the training facility for the Kansas City Chiefs and took his own life. So, of course, things like that, very, very alarming. And, if there are signs for someone that actually just kind of acts out of the ordinary for themselves, please try to reach out to that particular person to try to get them the help that they need.
Yes, and Brent, thank you for bringing it, because Tom Jackson when it was happening, it was senior year in high school, and it pissed me off. Tom Jackson was because he wanted to show he had empathy for the girlfriend that got killed, and I definitely understand that, but he basically was dismissive of what happened to Belcher. Like, he was like, man, forget that dude. But I understand he took his life in another undeserving life. But you played football in the 70s, a rough time, Tom Jackson. And you was a bad member jammer, but not everybody wasn't as mentally strong as you.
80s, bro.
Yeah, it's 80s. Thank you, Coach. So you being, dismissive of what happened to that young man, basically like forget that young man. That made me look at like, wow, man, nobody really is not going to try to help some of these young athletes going through this until it's too late. Even the people that played the damn sport before.
That's a whole different subject.
That was people in his time that was killing themselves and beating up their wives too. Tom Jackson ain't got no right to look up at nobody like that. Especially in that time when football was football in his time.
Well, stuff like that was easier to sweep up under the rug than it is now. With all these informational outlets that we have now, it's not as easy. But back then, you could just say that somebody's lying, and that's the end of the story.
Right.
That's crazy, man. But yeah, see, if you know somebody who's going through it, or you even going through it yourself, please get some help. Talk to somebody. If you're a spiritual person, talk to a preacher or whatever may have you, counselor, you know, therapist, whatever. You know what I mean? Just don't do anything to yourself
or anybody else.
or anybody else. Your life here is precious, even though a lot of times this life is hard as hell. But fellas, I'm gonna wrap up on that note. I appreciate you guys so much for taking your time out of your day to join me on this panel. Brent, appreciate you. Coach, appreciate you. I know you guys are busy, man. Appreciate you. Starting with you, Brent. Anything you want to shout out before we leave?
Absolutely, man. And I really like congratulations to
you chopping out. You chopping up right now, Brent.
Yeah, brother Brent sound like a robot right about now. Can you hear us, brother Brent? You sound like a robot.
Yeah, I can hear y'all. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but you sound like a robot.
Yeah, you sound like a robot.
Okay, hang on a second.
That was better.
Yeah, that
All
sounded.
right, how about now?
Yeah.
This better?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What I was saying was congratulations to Jared Big Baby Anderson on his unanimous decision over Charles Martin. You know, I just want to end things on a positive note, man. Speaking of that, man, y'all please check out my channel. I am going to try to come out with another video, I believe, by next Thursday. It's actually going to pick up with a subject that we've already discussed, which was the decline of the running back position. I'm going to give my take on it because, you know, running back is a very passionate thing for me. And, you know, I love to kind of get in the weeds of that and delve into it and kind of, you know, present you all with some information on that. So, you know, look for it possibly around next Thursday.
We'll be on it.
Yes, sir.
And whoever listens to this, please subscribe.
Yes, sir.
And happy birthday, belated birthday, brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Happy belated birthday, brother Brent.
And
thank
God
y'all.
Bless you and wish you many more.
Yes, sir. And hey, bros, I appreciate y'all, man, because y'all were a huge inspiration for me to try to get this channel up off the ground and get started with it. So I can't thank you, brothers, enough for your encouragement.
Oh, sure. We everybody, you know, all the people that's in my chat right now, that's watching me, and then, you know, all y'all, you know, we all help each other out. So that's our pedigree. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
But Coach 67 Sports TV, what's going on, brother?
Yes, sir. Y'all can catch me here on YouTube at Coach 67 Sports TV, at Coach 67 Sports TV on all social media platforms, on Twitter, Instagram, even on TikTok. You know, right now I'm in a process of, you know, making a career transition in terms of pivot. In addition to that, I'm working on some personal issues in terms of, you know, some personal projects I'm working on. However, I'm in the process of trying to like elevate the caliber and quality of my content. I'm also trying to push, because right now I'm at like 150 subscribers. I'm trying to push to get to that 1,000 subscriber mark. So y'all please like, share, subscribe. For all of my Southern University fans, I'm getting ready to drop some more Southern University content. You know, shout out to Southern University and shout out to the awesome and amazing LDBC. Hopefully y'all enjoyed the show, and I'll catch y'all on the rebound. Y'all have a blessed, phenomenal evening and weekend.
You too, you guys too, and thank you thank you brothers, so much for dropping by. But y'all enjoy the rest of y'all weekend. Y'all be safe out here. Again, another installment of the Southern Ballers Show. Y'all have a blessed night.
Peace and blessings, everyone.
Yeah, have a blessed one.